Here we are. Welcome to you. And nice to see you this morning.
Yes, absolutely. It's good to see you too. So it's nice to see people.
Frankly, so true. Isn't that the truth, Colin? For sure. Okay, you need to introduce yourself at the start of this because I know who you are, but we want to make sure everybody popping into our hallway conversation knows who you are also.
Sure. So my name is Colin Czerneda. I'm a digital media specialist for the Faculty of Humanities, specifically work under John Bell in Humanities, Media, and Computing. And I wear a bunch of different hats in my role, ranges from doing social media and video photography work to doing IT projects. So we've just wrapped up our phase 1 launch of the new Faculty of Humanities website. Go check it out. We have launched all of the main websites for the departments, including all their program information for grad and undergrad level, as well as research. And that was quite a substantial rollout. We're currently working on phase 2, which will include some of the more ancillary sites and some of the other. There's a couple of unique programs that we have in the faculty that we haven't rolled out their new website yet, so we're working away on those. So yeah, that's kind of my role in a nutshell.
So you're sitting around with nothing to do is what I'm hearing.
Oh yeah.
Please give me work. That was what I heard from all of that. Those are exciting projects though, because they have immediate impact, right? The way in which people interpret what humanities does, but all of these various sites have somebody behind them who's been thinking about how they'd like to have information presented. Have you been doing web design for a long time, Colin? Is that something that was in your past? Did you build websites for the local library when you were a teenager?
I did, not the library, but yeah, it was one of those things where I remember quite clearly. It was the early days of the web, and my father is a teacher and was the designated information technology teacher, and he brought home it was a 2-page sheet that had all of the HTML tags that you needed to know. And frankly, there weren't that many at the time, so that was probably most of them. I'm starting to date myself a tad. And so I thought, oh, this is cool. And, I made my first sort of Hello World website, and it kind of went on from there. I actually, I ended up, as a teenager, I ran several community fan websites for different video games, and I was part of the Planet Network at one point. That was a bunch of entertainment focused websites. So I had a website that was part of their network. So there's some web history for folks. So I've always been doing web related stuff. And when I was working for Learning Technology Resource Center, which is now McPherson, when I was working there, we did a lot of, the learning management systems were all web driven. So, having that background was helpful. So
no doubt. Yeah, that's great. I think that's really interesting. So I used to build websites too, and using HTML. So did you, as these new web editors came online, did you kind of think, purist, that's just not was there a moment of, I would never use that to do a website?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm sure I had a moment like that, but I have flipped the other way because I have not kept up with the coding side of things. I think, frankly, I was always more interested in what the outcome was and how you structured content. So, the code was a necessary evil for me. It wasn't I didn't take part in the joy of doing the code. I took part in the code turning something out interesting.
Yeah, very good.
So yeah, when the editors came along, yeah, I was resistant at first, but now I am solely reliant on them. So other people do much better code than I do, and I prefer to kind of think about how information's organized and user flow and sort of those attributes of the web experience. So yeah.
It's a creative outlet regardless, isn't it? I think that that's the thing that's really interesting. If you think about transitioning creativity into IT, a lot of people wouldn't think about it as a creative outlet, but there are a lot of ways in which we use our creative strengths to do the work that we do. One could say problem solving period is just a creative outlet, but definitely websites has a bit more of a creative, an evident creative component to it, which is really interesting. And to your point, the way in which content is delivered really has an impact on how people absorb the information. It's that whole message median thing, which is really cool. So that's good. So, and do you write? Are you a writer as well? Is that something that you find yourself doing quite a bit of?
Yeah, quite a bit. I have my own blog that I maintain outside of work, which I get to do a lot of writing on, but I do a lot of writing in my job, both of the sort of more, I don't know what you want to call it, the proposal, the project side of things. I do quite a bit of writing there. I've also written a number of articles over the years for McMaster Daily News or I don't know if any of them have shown up on Brighter World, but yeah, I've done a fair bit of that, or I've done a little bit of editing or those types of things. I've also gotten people together so that they can go off and write something. And I've just been the idea person to go, we should connect these ideas together and let them go with it. But yeah, no, I quite like, I enjoy writing. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot that that's also, you're also tied in with the communications team, obviously through the web related things, but that you've written some of those articles. That's great. I didn't know that. I'll have to go looking for the Colin headline and see if I can see some of your articles out there, Colin. I haven't. Go ahead.
There's a few. Yeah. Well, and so I've been a bit of a one-stop shop. So I think there's a couple articles out there where I wrote the article, I did the video interview, and I took the photo. So
all in one. You're like that guy, from the TV news with the camera on your shoulder running down the street. You're doing it all. One man show. I like that. That's really good. And that is, that's the nice thing. You've got all the technology at your fingertips to make that all happen, which is pretty cool. Yeah. I started off my undergraduate degree. I started off in journalism at Carleton University. That was my first move before I moved into English literature. And I liked the idea of taking information and telling people what was going on. And I think, that curious mind element is a key component of my strengths, and maybe probably in some cases my shadow strengths as well. It's the curiosity. You get into little rabbit holes around people, really curious about people, which is why I do hallway conversations, because I'm curious about people. And I just, I think it's really interesting to hear what people are doing in their work, but more broadly, in their life. And so Colin, you and I have talked about this before, but we met on Twitter, I think, before we met in person, which is funny. So I have to ask you this, you're gonna laugh when I ask you this. Well, maybe you won't laugh, I don't know, but like you have a real love for weather.
I do.
So tell me what that's all about. I'm really curious about your weather interests. And we all have to be interested in weather, but you actually really are a weather person.
Yeah, it's another hobby that I dabble in, I guess you could say. Yeah, my parents were geography geologists by education. Neither of them went into that field directly, but so they had a great interest for everything from weather to rocks. So I picked up a little bit of those things along the way, but like it wasn't unusual for us to watch a good thunderstorm go past. And when the internet, made radar really easily accessible, we spent a bit of time looking at the radar and comparing, what you could see in the sky. So that's kind of where I started. I had many summers that I worked as a soccer referee, and I remember very clearly there was a game that I was refereeing at a field that had a lot of trees, and so you couldn't really see the sky. But I remember it went from a beautiful summer evening to suddenly there was this cloud that was a dark looking cloud coming, and then there was some thunder, and I ended up calling the game, as is the regulations when a thunderstorm nears. And I was very glad that I did, because about 4 or 5 minutes later, the sky went black, and there was a lot of lightning and heavy rain, and obviously not a good time for people to be out on a soccer field. So
No.
I think that was a sort of a moment for me, where after that I spent a lot more time paying close attention to forecasts and the probabilities of thunderstorm development and that kind of thing, because I didn't want to be caught unaware of a possible storm. So it kind of evolved from there. And there's just so much information that's available now on Twitter from meteorologists that post information and share information that you can learn from, and websites that offer raw information or weather ensembles, so you can have a look at what a computer model is saying is going to happen over the next 24 hours or several days or whatever. I find the whole thing fascinating. I know only enough to kind of get by. I keep learning.
To be dangerous. I think one of the things that I have that horror fascination around are tornadoes. And so I sometimes do find myself, if I happen to see people posting video of tornadoes hitting, and I find that really fascinating, especially in this area, because we've had, not long after I moved to Guelph, we had a tornado hit here. It was pretty impactful, and I find it quite frightening, but also fascinating at the same time. So it's March the 1st, Colin. You know what the old saying is: in like a lamb, out like a lion, or out like a lion, in like. So what? Using your weather, what is it? Prognostication.
Yep.
That's what. So what are we expecting in March?
Yeah.
Put you on the spot.
Sure. So and I listen to what the real meteorologists,
the real people,
have the degree in this. I think
not the people using the old wives' tales, but let's hear it. Okay, sorry to interrupt you.
For sure.
I'm listening.
I'm the knowledge translator. I just read what I and then I interpret and then share. So what I've been reading is they're expecting a March to be above normal temperatures for most of the season, or most of the month. Some of them are calling it Morch, so it was a torch. So that was the portmanteau.
Okay.
So that said, I think there were a couple of models that came out over the weekend that were suggesting that it'd be a bit cooler by the end of the month. So and these are all averages, of course. So you can you go up and down across them. And as the month goes on, March, the average temperature climbs a fair bit. So I think that it's going to be. It's going to feel warmer, especially in the mid part of the month. And I think even at the end of the month, even if it dips a little bit below, it's not going to be like January or February. So
wow. So we're going to feel like spring. Nice. Yeah, it sounds like
nice.
Spring. No snow. We're going to have our snow all disappear. In other words, that's one of the things. So yeah,
I would never rule it out. March is notorious for throwing in a random snowstorm somewhere. So I would say, be on guard for that. We still occasionally see flurries into May. So
I know. Yeah, no, we don't count anything out. We're in Canada. We don't count anything out, but it will be interesting to see. So thank you. That's helpful. I'm good to know. So I can, dig out something other than a pair of boots, maybe for somewhere mid-March. Who wears shoes anymore anyway? I mean, really, it's become one of those crazy things. So have you found that you've changed a lot in terms of your regular habits, and what are you, not that I need to ask all the questions, what are you wearing or whatever, but it's pretty chilled out, isn't it? Don't you think? Are you finding it pretty relaxing?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Yeah, I don't know, in terms of habits. I mean, I've been trying to make sure I get out for my daily walk if I can, but it's been hard through the winter, and it's been cold. I don't know. Do do you do a daily walk or go for hikes or anything like that? Or
I was really good up until Christmas,
yeah,
and then I moved in January, and it's totally thrown me off. And I actually was saying to my mother, I'm like, gosh, I don't even think I've left the house for the last week. So I'm actually going into really bad cycles right now where I haven't been outside. So that's not good. I'm getting exercise because I have an exercise bike and what have you, but I definitely am not getting the walk that I was getting. And frankly, I think there's twofold to a walk. One is exercise, yes, but the other is just air and nature and just bigger world around you than the four walls that we're stuck in all the time. So yeah. So do you find that to be helpful for you, the walk? And how long is the walk for you typically, or do you have fluctuations?
it's usually about a 25-minute walk around the neighborhood, if I'm not pressed for time, which I frequently am. But if I can get it in, it's about 25 minutes, and it's about a 2K route. So
Yeah.
that's what I try and do, which sort of mimics my walk to and from the car when I was working on campus. So
Good.
I try and do that, and I'm a runner, so so I've been running through the season, but it has been the last couple of weeks I have not been on my usual schedule. The sidewalks are not in great shape, but they're starting to get better again. So and I'm signed up to do the so Boston Marathon has a 5K route that they normally run, and this year it's a virtual Boston 5K. So I signed up to run Boston.
Oh, cool. That's a great idea. Wonderful. When is the Boston Marathon again? Is that in April or is it May?
In April.
Oh, it is in April. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's exciting. You can say that you've run that. So yeah, that's pretty good. And what does that entail? They give you the actual, an app that you can pretend you're following the route, or how does it work?
Yeah, you're supposed to record and present to them your 5K information when you've completed it. So there's a bit of an honor system there, but unless you're one of the elite athletes, most people are going to turn in a fairly sort of average time. So I've set myself a reasonable goal. It's not a personal best goal because I haven't been running as much, but I've set myself still an ambitious goal. So we'll see if I can hit that. And
yeah. So what's a typical distance for you? 5K, is that actually pretty short for you compared to, what do you usually, a 10K, or what's your thing?
Yeah, my favorite race distance is 10, and I run more than a half dozen half marathons or equivalent trail races. So half marathons are 21.1 kilometers, and trail races are even numbers, so they're usually 20 or 25. So I've done a bunch of those. I haven't gone longer. I had been planning to do around the Bay, but 2020 happened, so maybe 2022.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing because running itself is such a individual sport, but when you're running in these big races, the start and even in the running, especially now they're talking about the expiration of, our breath going behind us and the impact of people behind us, et cetera. There's a lot of things in that are a little tricky, but I can only think that all the people because there's a real, regular routine for runners to do races. I ran for a little while in the early 2000s, and my maximum was a 10K, and I'm a terrible runner. I hate the experience of actually running. I know this sounds really weird. I love the idea of running. I love it when I'm finished running, but the actual running itself for me was a real psychological burden. Like, I really overthought everything, my footsteps, my knee, and this hurts, that hurts, this is chafing, that isn't working, whatever. So I stopped running, which was probably a good thing for my psyche. But I think it's really great when people are super charged up to do these crazy, like for me, I think even a half marathon, that's a lot of time running.
Yes.
So
yeah.
And a marathon seems crazy. I mean, I just can't get over the idea of running for 3.5, 4.5 hours. Or in my case, it'd probably be more like 5.5 hours. I mean, who's got time for that? That's what I used to think. But it's an amazing sport, and I know for many people, it's been really a way to get outside and get moving. And so for you, what do you think the draw for running is for you? Is it that? Is it, time on your own? Is it time to think? What do you do while you run? What are you thinking about?
Yeah, it's definitely time to think. Good chance to process stuff and work and personal and otherwise. I belong to a running club as well.
Oh, good.
So there's a strong social component to it.
Yeah.
And so normally we'd run together on a Sunday and get in 10 or 15 or 20K on the trails or sometimes less, and then go for brunch. So
yeah, nice.
I'm missing that right now. We're still connected virtually, but it's not
I
the
was
same.
going to ask, if you guys are keeping in touch with each other. And do you find that most of the people in a running club, I have to think because it becomes so ingrained in your regular routine that people are still pushing themselves to get outside and try and do some kind of activity at minimum, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. And you share the selfie at the end with your rosy cheeks and
exactly. So do you treadmill run then when you can't get outside? No. Okay.
I don't have a treadmill and I can't do it. I need the motion across space, I think helps. It definitely helps me. And if I'm having a good day, and some days you run and it's a difficult process and things hurt and it's not happening, but there's other days where you feel like you're gliding along and you just the world is passing by quickly, and that's always enjoyable.
Yeah, you feel strong. Do you think so? Did you ever run around campus are you a lunchtime runner as well, Colin?
I know there's a couple of groups that do that. I've not joined them yet, but I've run through campus many times. If
you live near the campus? You live near the campus? No.
I live in Waterdown. So
okay, no. So, wait, that would be a run, right? That'd be a good one.
Yeah, but once upon a time, I was a member of the running room just across from campus. So it wasn't unusual to run through campus as part of an evening training run or something like that. So
excellent. Yeah.
It's
fun to have hobbies like that. So now that spring is coming, if anyone who's listening to this has an inkling to become a runner, is there any advice that you would give to people who might be thinking about running? Everybody's trying new things now that it's a different world. So what are you thinking about as advice for maybe runners?
Yeah, the advice that was given to me and that it took me a little while to absorb was to really start small, which sounds obvious, but you go out there and you're like, I should be able to run, a distance, and that it can be difficult, especially the first time out, because your body kind of is in a bit of shock. Like, what are you doing?
This doesn't feel like sitting on a sofa. Yeah.
No, this is uncomfortable. So, to any aspiring runner, get a good pair of shoes. That's important, and then start small. Like, you get out and you walk and you run maybe once or twice on your first time out, and you only run for, say, a minute or two. And then the next time you go out, the second time in the week, you do the same thing. And then, a couple of weeks go past and you're like, okay, this is all right. I'm used to this now. And then you increase that a little bit, and you work your way up in small percentages. That's how you train. That's how the elite runners train. That's how, the new to running person trains. The amount of times are different, but the overall strategy is always the same.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's great advice and very doable. And I think is pretty easy for people then to get their heads around that. And also maybe to identify whether they really want to be running or walking. I mean, that's a whole other thing right there. But I remember somebody telling me, because I, used to think, well, I'm not really, as soon as you're running, you're a runner. You may not be an elite runner, or you may not be killing it in the races, but you're running. So, I mean, it is true. There's a starting point, and people should just give themselves a pat on the back for trying something different, right? I think that's a good piece of advice. Cool. So do you have a favorite pair of running shoes that you've overworn because you just don't want to give them up? I think it's hard to let go of the comfortable shoes.
Well, yes and no. So I'm not too sentimental about my shoes. depends on who you ask in terms of how quickly you should replace them. But my shoes tend to wear out within 6 months or less. So I
But you are
frequently
using your shoes. I think I have a pair of running shoes I've had for 5 years, for goodness sake. So
yeah, and I mean, and the thing is, they look great.
yeah.
So you're like, oh, they're still fine, you know, unless they've been on a particularly muddy trail run or something. But they look great. But the foam inside has worn out. So yeah, there's been a couple that I've held on to, you know, until maybe like 1,000 kilometers, and then it's all right, it's probably time to get a new pair. So. But I have some New Balance shoes right now that I'm pretty happy with. But I've had Brooks before and some other brands. So
There's so many out there.
you get into a particular type of shoe that you know works for you, and you kind of you go, okay, knock on wood, not getting any injuries with this shoe, so I'm going to stick with it. So yeah.
So what do you do with your old shoes? Do you toss them up into a tree in your backyard and keep them up there for posterity? Isn't that a thing? I think that's a thing.
I think some people might. There are a number of organizations that take used running shoes.
Oh, good. Okay.
So I usually donate them. You know, like if you have a local running room, you can always take them there. Most of them have a box to deposit used running shoes. And like I said, a lot of them tend to look just fine. So for someone who, you know, maybe a new shoe is difficult to get access to, a well cared for, even if it's been used, running shoe is a good thing to have. So
that's amazing. I didn't even know
yeah.
that's wonderful. Great advice, Colin. That's so good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, you know, as usual, I could just keep talking to you. We're going to have to do another one of these. We don't have to record them all, but anyway, I do appreciate you making time for this hallway conversation. Any final words of wisdom that you can share with people about you and your areas of expertise?
Geez, I'm trying to think of something. I don't know. I don't know, maybe just thinking of all our current contacts, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. We can see it. I'm just going to have to hold on to that for a bit. So there's my words of wisdom.
I think those are great words of wisdom, and they tie really nicely to the promise of warmer temperatures, which you've also given us. So I appreciate that. Yeah. We've actually had a very spring-like conversation, running and weather, and yeah, so it's perfect. I love it. It's a great way to start. Yeah, sure. Colin, so nice to see you. Take good care of yourself, and we'll look forward to being connected again, hopefully soon.
Sure. You as well. Take care.
Okay, we'll be in touch.